So what was your inspiration for some of the scripts? Was it something that you had watched before, something that inspired you when you were children? What's been the inspiration for the storylines?
This would be cool.
My main inspiration.
I think it's like, I mean, literally it is what's cool. I mean, you know, you start throwing cards up on a board and you go...
And see how much you can blow up.
I think it actually almost always in our particular case comes from the characters. And, you know, this season, I think, last season the characters were, in the first season of the show, you kind of have to create them. But in the second season, you kind of up and running, you get to see what they're doing. And so we just sit down and say, okay, well, this happened, this is what's going to happen next to this person. You know, Rachel's going to try to start to have a boyfriend. What is that going to be like
for Rachel?
For Rachel, and what story? You know, if you know, what's the version of that story that we can only tell on Alphas? And that's always what you try to do. I mean, the world that Michael and Zach Penn created was just so rich and specific. Like there's an only on Alphas version of telling that story, and it's very realistic and very grounded, and everybody who has any kind of ability has some sort of gigantic downside. I think like most of us, you know, it's like, you know, and so, you know, once you get into that world, it's very easy to kind of create stories, but we don't usually start from, you know, okay, we're going to blow shit up and then we'll see what happens. That usually comes much later. And
I mean, sometimes we'll generate a story.
Not that there's not plenty of blowing stuff up, just to be clear.
I mean, sometimes we'll generate a story from we'll think of some really cool alpha ability, and that might be a guest character, but then it always becomes, you know, how does that story become a story about our characters?
Right. Gotcha. And also, what's the psychological issue that we're exploring in this? You know, how does that person's ability and our character's abilities and who they are as human beings, where's the intersection for all of that creates like identifiable human drama? That's always what we are hoping to get.
And Robert has such a background in sci-fi television, and Michael has been involved in sci-fi film so much that's really what it's always about in sci-fi. Sci-fi is so themey, you know, because it's one big metaphor for, you know, you're telling such metaphorical stories, and I think that's what we always try to do, is tell a story that you're watching it, and even though you're watching someone who can, you know, see smells, you're thinking, you know, it's just the same when I go to my grandmother's house and I want to gag. And okay, so now how does she deal with it, and how would I deal with it?
Oh.
Yeah. Or for Rachel specifically, having a relationship. Everyone, when they start a new relationship, if that relationship has emotional power for them, it is incredibly awesome and also scary, and all your feelings and sensitivities are dialed way up, and that can be amazing, and that can be a really difficult experience. And so to see that through Rachel, who takes that and, like in all good science fiction, amplifies it a notch, makes it a little more mythological in a way, and hopefully makes it a little more resonant and universal too.
Excuse me to stop to cut you off, but in season 1, it was all about introducing all the alpha characters and what their abilities were, their upsides, downsides. But I really got the feeling that once with the finale, that you guys are going to move into more story arc. Is that true, or can you give us kind of a hint of kind of where that's going a little bit?
Well, these guys, I didn't come on until season 2, but I was a huge fan of season 1, and I thought there was a lot of story arc and story, you know, character growth, but they were burdened by the idea you have to introduce everybody, you know, where do they go to the office, who lives where, all that kind of stuff. But I think this season is definitely much more serialized, but still every episode is a fun, you know, you can watch it on your own, enjoy it.
Can you give us a hint about a little bit about the arc, or what do we have to look forward to?
When you have a guy, an alpha who's been around for 200 years, say that a war is coming, and he seems to be eager, or somewhat at least, you know, feels like that might not be a bad thing, I think that is pretty clear that's going to carry a lot of freight. And some of that freight will explode.
But in terms of character arcs, I mean, we have everything from, you know, a lot of it is about their personal lives. A lot of it is about Rachel trying to figure out a way to have a romantic relationship. Gary, the wonderful Ryan Cartwright, decides he wants to be independent, so he moves out of his house, but he moves into the office. instead of, and so, which is the funniest thing in the universe when you see it happen. And for the character of Harkin, he is trying to balance this great strength, which with the fact that it almost kills him all the time, and through a new character, Aaron Way, he kind of finds this balance, this way to use his ability and not have it kind of rip him apart. But it's all about his life and his life becoming much more balanced, and that he's always been one of those guys who feels like, I'm not in the right job, I don't know whether I want to have kids and all that kind of stuff, and it's about him by the end of the season kind of looking around going, I feel really good. I feel like my life is in a place where I can handle it. So, that in addition to huge, life-changing, world-changing stuff about, alphas among us and what kind of future.
But even that story is told mostly through the point of view of Rosen reconnecting with his estranged daughter. I mean, so it is this earth-shaking thing, but at the end of the day, it's about a father who's lost contact with his daughter because he tried to control her too much, and now he's trying to establish an adult relationship with her, and that's an incredibly cool and powerful story that is informed and sort of heightened by the stakes.
And when you have
which turn out to be
David,
very huge.
when you have David Strathairn and Kathleen Monroe who plays Danny, it's wonderful and heartbreaking and
It's
difficult.
very grounded and real. It doesn't feel like you're watching a superhero show.
Yeah.
I like the superhero stuff, but
Well,
This is a little different.
you know what? There's that too.
Yeah.
Super, but human. Super,
Hey,
but
that's a
human.
good
Yeah,
catchphrase.
superhuman rather than superhero. But there is a lot. There's cool stuff. Are they keep waving, but I have no idea.
Maybe not.
Real quickly, are we going to, can you give us a hint about whether or not we're going to see more of Nina's past? Like, is her former lifestyle going to come into play again?
In fact, we are.
An extraordinary amount. We're trying to, I think, reveal both how people are living their lives in the present and how they live their lives in the past. But Nina, her character really has quite a difficult time at the beginning of the season. Has gone off the rails and back to a lifestyle where, what would your life be if you could get anything you want? Everything starts to be kind of meaningless after a while. And we get to see her past to the point where we see flashbacks of her as a child and what it was like when she first figured out that she could do it, which is so wonderful and so interesting. Think about the first time you figure out, oh my God, when I say it, they do it. So we have one of the things that we always, I wanted to see as a viewer, and these guys wanted to do as writers all the way from the beginning, is where do these people come from? And so that's what we were just as curious about it as the audience, and I think we have some great stories and some great opportunities, but we're not doing time travel. Sorry.
Lots of flashbacks.
Thank you so much for stopping by.
Thank you.
Damn.
I thought they were trying to. I thought they were waving.
All right. You know what? If we
Anybody else?
We just want to see you do musical chairs. One get up, one get down.
dance writers dance.
well, if no one's gonna make you guys leave,
Yeah, do you guys rate more to how you visualize the characters, or do you rate to the actors, or is it a mix of both? What's been your experience in the actual writing of?
Well, I think in television the great thing is those two things kind of come together, because over time, you write this, and then David does this with that. You go, oh, he did that. That scene that I thought was going to be angry is really kind of soft and grounded and sympathetic. Let's write more towards that, and so you kind of work towards each other. It's like having an ensemble company
Do you
of
think
actors.
you'll be able to do more of that? Now that you know the actors and you know their beats and you know more.
Oh yeah, you develop tropes,
Yeah.
you're like, okay, this is where Gary would do this,
Yeah.
but he's generated a lot of that, It's like, it's just this symbiotic.
In any show, yeah, it is.
Thing.
It is this completely symbiotic thing. Especially the longer you go, the better you know them, the better they know sort of the voices of the show that the writers are bringing
The
them.
excitement.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
That's what's fun.
It
Watching
also
them bring
allows
it
you
to
to
life.
push into unexpectedly.
One of the things that's really, really empowering as a writer is knowing that when you write something and send it to set, it will be realized at least as good as where you wrote it, but probably it will be better. And that is incredibly empowering as a writer. And we have such a wonderful cast that's what we get. And we get that all the time.
It's like one of the most exciting things is you go to set and you watch them bring it to life.